William Bryant, better known simply as the Bear. Bear has been a legend in the South for many years. Last November 28th, his legend grew. Alabama's 28-17 victory over Auburn was the 315th win of Bryant's career, more than any other college coach. Now Bryant's life story will be made into a major motion picture, and producer Larry Spangler has narrowed the field of leading men to just two.
We've had both formal discussions with both George C. Scott and with Burt Lancaster. I would say that those two men, both Oscar winners, are in the finals, so to speak, and we'll make a decision shortly.
Well, yeah, I think they're great actors, but it'll take a great actor to do me. I have confidence in these people. I'm really impressed with them.
Bryant says he doesn't expect the movie to make any money, but he does hope maybe his rags to riches story will help some youngsters along the way. And youngsters will have a chance to see it. The movie, tentatively titled Bear, will be rated PG. It's expected to premiere in September 1983.
This was a meeting of more than 100 members of the Alabama Republican Executive Committee. Their faces are not familiar like the candidates, but they're working behind the scenes in many campaigns right now. The Republicans want to win badly, and a lot of their hopes rest with this man, Emory Fulmer. The candidate for governor dumps many of the state's problems on Democratic doorsteps. Fulmer says the Democrats have had plenty of time and opportunities to solve problems, but they haven't.
How indeed do they warrant a vote of confidence after having every one of them have their hands on the levers of power for all these many years? I submit to you it is indeed time for fresh new leadership, and we, this party, offers it.
Candidates like Fulmer and Leo Yambrick, who's running for the U.S. Congress from the 5th District, will run on the party platform the Executive Committee adopted today. One top priority in the platform is crime prevention. The platform urges a crackdown on drug trafficking and recommends compensation for crime victims. The Republicans also want to abolish lottery selection for kindergarten students.
We believe that every child in Alabama should have the opportunity to have a kindergarten education, and it's unfair to have the child in the first house on the block getting a kindergarten education and the child in the second house not getting one just because of some lottery selection.
The platform also talks about national issues. It endorses the new federalism programs of President Reagan and stresses a Republican fundamental, a return to the free enterprise system. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
This statement, made on behalf of me personally, Morris Dees, and on behalf of the Southern Poverty Law Center, is in response to a letter from attorneys for Reverend John Knutson, in which they assert that Reverend Knutson has been libeled and slandered. More specifically, Reverend Knutson's attorneys contend that he was falsely charged, either directly or by implication, in February of this year, with a variety of criminal activities, including slavery, fraud, false imprisonment, and the sale of babies, in connection with a pending federal court lawsuit. This lawsuit was originally brought on behalf of a pregnant Montgomery teenager identified as Candy H., seeking emergency relief to obtain her release from a girl's home in Mississippi. Reverend Knutson, who had located the home for Candy and had taken her to the home in his car, was joined along with several officials and employees of the home as a party defendant in the lawsuit. Neither I nor any of Candy's other attorneys has stated in any television interview that Reverend Knutson was personally involved in any criminal activity, nor have I or any of Candy's other attorneys intended in any television interview to imply that Reverend Knutson was involved directly or indirectly in any criminal conduct or activity.
At 38, Tom Krebs has a long list of accomplishments, ranging from working in a multi-state investigation of coal fraud to gaining national recognition for his crackdown on white-collar crime. But late last week, Krebs announced he's putting an end to 7 years in the securities office.
I've been wanting to get into securities practice as a lawyer and to do those class action lawsuits and those things that lawyers do. And I need to spend some time with my family.
This weekend, Krebs is relaxing at his Montgomery home and reflecting on his accomplishments.
In 1975, there were 5 people at the Alabama Securities Commission on the staff side. The legislature thought we were that entity that locked up the state buildings and secured them at night. Now they know a little bit different. They understand the role that the commission plays with respect to the economy of this state. In 1980 alone, we registered for sale in Alabama securities having an aggregate value of $26 billion.
Krebs admits his work may have made him some enemies, but he denies rumors of strong friction between he and Attorney General Charles Graddick.
No, as a matter of fact, the Attorney General's office have prosecuted several cases we've investigated. No, that had nothing to do with it. The people that wanted me or suggested that I was running for Attorney General, you might anticipate that there was some, not hostility, but uncomfortableness between the two offices, but it never manifested itself. We continued to refer cases to him for prosecution, and he's prosecuted all that we've referred to him.
Looking ahead, Krebs says the securities industry needs to strengthen itself.
At this point in time, securities industry is going through a revolution. The economy is quite bad, so that you don't see that many strong securities coming to the market. What you do see is a lot of speculation in the market.
Krebs says his resignation was perhaps prompted most by a feeling that he was becoming a very good bureaucrat and not a very good lawyer. Now he says he has no future plans for politics. He's getting back to law. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
We like to present you with a check, Miss Paulette Parker, for your love and for your dedication. Because at times when we were down and we thought that didn't anyone care, you was always there to show your love. In doing so, we feel like it's our...
In the other prisons across Alabama, I just want to let them know how much Gene had a problem. And I feel like maybe somebody can reach him. I couldn't. Maybe somebody can.
A check for $302.
Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you.
Appreciate it.
The former governor was greeted by a blast of music and the roar of applause. To the front, he was flanked by hundreds of supporters. To the rear, he was surrounded by young businessmen there to testify that Wallace is the only candidate who can attract industry to Alabama, a point the former governor drilled home again and again.
The point is they know Alabama, and you made Alabama known through me. And as a consequence, I was always able to see and talk to those who were going to bring plans to the South.
The former governor was not the only man with a message. Angry net fishermen crowded the back with signs in hand. Fresh from a fishing net challenge and brush with the law, they didn't want their problems to go unnoticed. There was at least one non-voter in the crowd, Pee-wee the monkey.
Why did I bring my monkey? I'm going to have him elected for something new. You see, he has more sense than people.
There seemed to be one slight monkey on George Wallace's back. Reports that challenger Joe McCorkadale is ahead in one poll. Wallace didn't think much of that.
It's a propaganda poll, of course it is. In fact, they came to me, want me to subscribe to it. Well, I'll tell you what, all you've got to do, no other candidate running for governor will draw in such a crowd as this anywhere in this part of the country, not less Robbinsdale. Is that right? You'll agree with that.
It's difficult to hinder prayer in schools if we put the right emphasis on it. A child can pray without parting his lips. Religion is a thing of the spirit, and I think so is prayer.
No, because they've been there, you know, they were there to take care of them.
A hearing on state Supreme Court candidate Jim Ziegler's request to disqualify his Republican opponent, Tom Hayden, is set for tomorrow in Birmingham. Former Governor George Wallace will speak in Ozark and Daleville Monday. Montgomery Mayor Emery Fulmer speaks to the Enterprise Rotary Club at noon Tuesday. Alabama football coach Bear Bryant holds his annual preseason news conference on Tuesday. And the Talladega 500 NASCAR Grand National Stock Car Race will be held at the Alabama International Motor Speedway Sunday, August the 1st.
We got it.
It's a learning experience. They've grown up with the game where most of us just started when we were 13 or 14. So we mainly are out there just to learn how to play better than what we do now.
Was it tough today?
Extremely hot, extremely tiring, and extremely tough.
It's tough. It's tough playing them. They're real good, and they're aggressive, and they play hard. And it's hard to beat all that.
Russell McCraw says he was recruited by congressional aides in 1968 to gather information on the sex life of a top congressional leader. McCraw says these aides believed the politician was homosexual.
This person was in a place of position in Washington where he had been, for many, many years, to where it was time for him to step aside and there was no other way to get him out. But it was never used against him because he mysteriously died in his sleep.
McCraw says he assumed another identity for more than 3 years and was paid handsomely in cash for his efforts. But he began to have doubts and tried to back out of the arrangement.
I was picked up by the FBI in Clarksville, Tennessee, my hometown. I was kept in a military prison for almost 30 days, saying that I would never be allowed to tell the story.
McCraw won't name the aides or the man they supposedly wanted to blackmail, but he promises to tell more in a book he's writing, due to be released next year. What's important to McCraw now, he says, is his ministry and an organization he started called Be Whole. He compares it to Alcoholics Anonymous for homosexuals.
But I seek to let the gay community know that there is an alternative lifestyle, that they can be made whole. They cannot be made whole, as the psychiatric community has tried to teach them. from changing from gay to straight, but they can be made whole through Jesus Christ.
McCall
It's a
says he found
process of
his
really
way out of the gay
understanding.
life and wants to help other gays do the same. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
What's that, the freaking marijuana store?
Enterprise Wednesday at noon through, just a great deal of players because of my background in agriculture, and I've made an awful lot of speeches over the years in Britain, so I think just by an awful lot of hard work and the efforts of a lot of good volunteers that we're making some headway. And the fact too that, well, if that's it, sounds very good, doesn't it? Sounds very good.
Are you going to be doing case electronic media?
We will be doing certain things in due course.
We've got to really get angry about it, or we might as well just put our heads in the sand.
Okay, you also
And corporate contracts for small businesses as well, for long-term contracts. Perspective along with the advice from our local people. We cannot forget our local people. We must return to them periodically to get their feelings. That includes when you don't have barges bearing our products on foreign markets, you don't have dollars coming back. That is pitiful. That is criminal.
The truth of the matter is there is an end point somewhere out here where you reach the proposition just like New York did and say that we cannot afford this, and you shut down the whole system. I'm not saying it's going to be 5 years from now, 3 years from now, what have you.
Senator White says the money required to fund the system has grown at a considerable rate in the past 3 decades. White says in 1950 the retirement plan cost the state $4 million. In 1960, $9 million. In 1970, $34 million. And in 1982, $225 million. Senator White says even though the bill failed in the last special session, it must be getting close to passage.
So we must be eroding into the voting process. Nobody takes to television and this type of thing with paid political ads unless they are losing ground. So we figure that the more time that we have to explain, just like I have tried to explain today, then the better off we will be.
White feels the proposed new crime package by the governor will have a good chance of passing in the August special session, as well as the legal drinking age in Alabama being raised back to 21. Senator White also predicts that the state will go back to biannual sessions instead of meeting yearly. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Fulmer spoke today to the Alabama Association of Housing and Redevelopment Authorities, and he made a number of promises.
That as governor, I would have a liaison set up with you so that we can address problems, and the governor's office can work with you, not against you, but indeed as a partner. And that's what we need, and I will certainly stick by that. But we've got to make sure that the public is satisfied that they're getting their money's worth.
Fulmer pledged to help do away with the 1972 federal action called the Brooks Amendment. It set the maximum rent for all public housing at 25% of the renter's income. Fulmer says a minimum rent is needed for all tenants.
There's another thing that I would do and work hard for and have spoken out for, and that's to abolish legal services' right to sue you. I don't think one arm of the government ought to be suing another one. And of course, I don't think that legal services is doing what they were originally chartered to do. They've been meddling in everybody's business. Sue me about every morning, but that's all right. We win most of them.
Fulmer says he wants to see an end to welfare recipients receiving housing aid from more than one government agency, and he wants to make it easier for the housing authorities to manage public housing.
I think you should have an easier eviction procedure.
Fulmer says a way must be found to remove the disincentives for unemployed welfare recipients returning to work. Fulmer says it's all part of Alabama learning to deal with its problems responsibly. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News. When Fulmer opened his Birmingham campaign headquarters 2.5 weeks ago, he said we're in the season of promises for political candidates, and he would promise nothing but hard work. But today, as he spoke to the Alabama Association of Housing and Redevelopment Authorities, he was full of promises.
And if indeed I am elected governor of this state, as I hope I will be, your authorities will have an open door to the governor's office. And as governor, I would establish a liaison office between the housing authorities and the governor's office so that indeed we could coordinate our efforts in a smooth way so that we could work together on area, regional, and national matters. And
Fulmer says if he's elected, he'll fight to eliminate the Brooks Amendment, a 1972 federal action that limits public housing rent to 25% of the renter's income. Fulmer says he'll make sure there is a minimum rent to be paid.
There's another thing that I would do and work hard for and have spoken out for, and that's to abolish legal services' right to sue you. I don't think one arm of the government ought to be suing another one. And along that line, I think you should have an easier eviction procedure.
Fulmer is also calling for legislation to keep welfare recipients from getting housing aid from more than one government agency. Fulmer says the housing authorities in the state are the link between 160,000 low-income renters and the government, and good management of the authorities is the key to a successful public housing program. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Enterprise Wednesday at noon through, just a great deal of this. I just find an awful lot of hard work and the efforts of a lot of good volunteers that we're making some headway. And the fact too that the rural areas, because of my background in agriculture, and I made it all. Sounds very good, doesn't it? Sounds very good.
Are you going to be doing paid electronic media?
We will be doing certain things in due course.
Media advertising. I noticed this weekend on AM 10 at the campus started radio advertising.
I haven't heard of it radio advertising. Sounds very good, doesn't it? Sounds very good.
Freedom of information. I really would. I would like to get your remarks and grasp in our marketplace, not only nationally but internationally. Montgomery and Elmore counties, with their access to the Alabama, the Coosa, and the Tallapoosa rivers, have a golden opportunity to expand our port facilities, to promote greater river traffic for our commercial interests, and develop terminal markets for international and national trade to sell our people's products. We need to accomplish these things, but it will take strong leadership. Our state legislature has procrastinated and acted only under the pressures of special interest groups when it comes to ad valorem taxes.
I don't think you can compare a business-like approach and a reduction in bureaucracy that the present administration pushes with one that is more in the direction of a politically run government that had a growth in bureaucracy. I noticed that we had a nice paper the other day talking about how much the income tax has grown, but it'd be interesting to see what the bureaucracy growth was during the very periods that we're talking about too.
As for his political career, Senator White says he's sitting out the next election, but that doesn't mean he won't be stumping his district again. White says there's been a lot of changes during his 8 years at the Capitol, most of them good. Senator White says the legislature had a good year this year because lawmakers passed fewer bills, which means less government involvement in the private sector. During a question and answer period, Senator White made several predictions, among them a return to the lawmakers meeting once every 2 years, the legal drinking age being raised to 21 in the state, and that the state teacher and employee retirement reform package will become law by November. White says if their state retirement plan is not reformed, Alabama will reach a point where it can't afford to fund it. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
The chairman of the Citizens Committee for Fair and Equitable Taxation, Richard Jordan, says people are upset about what they believe to be unfair property appraisals, and he told the commissioners about a plan the committee has drafted to correct what they see as problems with the state's tax structure. One part of that plan, an increase in homestead exemptions, has become law. The other parts include exempting those over 65 from any taxes on their homes, mandating specific qualifications for property appraisers, and decreased property taxes on small businesses. Jordan says they plan meetings with members of the Montgomery County Legislative Delegation to go over specific ideas that might turn up as bills in the next special session of the legislature. He called on county government to give tax money back to the people if it's not needed. Commissioner Bill Joseph urged caution in changing the county's property tax base in view of the upcoming bond issue that will provide money to build a new jail. He says the tax base will affect the interest the county will have to pay on the bonds. In other action, the commission approved a motion by Commissioner John Knight to run all personnel actions of the probate judge's office, except normal merit raises, through the commission for approval. Recently, a federal judge found the probate judge's office guilty of hiring discrimination. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
It's awful nice of you giving Jerry West employment, Coach. You know?
Well, you know he needs it. He really does. When a man just has all the free time that he does winning world championships, he needs time.
Have you told Jerry what he's going to do with, give him some ideas about what to do with James Worthy?
He consults me quite often. He checks my record out and sees that he could really use the help. But he does have a very severe problem there. He's going to work it out.
When you do work here, Jerry, what do you try to tell these kids?
Well, I think the one thing, particularly with young kids, you almost have to assure them that basketball is something that they can learn how to do. If they're choosing to make it a profession, and of course it's probably not a very wise decision, but I always try to be supportive of kids, try to tell them that the most important thing is to learn how to play with a sound foundation to almost everything they do. Basically, fundamentals are very important for young kids.
What are you going to do with James Worthy?
Well, we hope that he'll fit in nicely with our basketball team. We think he's a great player, and frankly, in professional basketball, because of the nature of the season, 82-game schedule, practice, injuries, which are a big part of our game, that there's no question that he should have a great chance to play a lot of basketball for our team. We think that he will fit in nicely with our team. He's a goal-orientated kid, and he's a flexible kid. We drafted him because we think he'll fit in with what we have, a running, wide-open type of a game. He's a great passer, a great ball handler, and he comes from a winning tradition, and we certainly every year would like to be able to draft a player like that.
Charles Clayton and Visit Clayton, Birmingham. University of Alabama, Birmingham. National Association of Manufacturers. Alabama Academy of Law. And the MD degree, Harvard University Alabama Academy of Law.
Well, I understand and appreciate Mr. Allen's position. I want to point out that he is not called upon to that I've been able to find in proceedings before you. It's ironic that you don't have any subpoena power, and yet the Democratic and Republican executive.
When a person becomes a professional athlete, he brings, as a businessman, an inventory which consists of his body and his mind. That's what he does. Those are the tools. That's what he has. That's what he gives, and that's what he contracts for use in return for the money. And in that contract, he promises to keep his body in the best physical condition in order to produce the results that the employer is expecting.
You know, when you read about particularly football players, the names have been mentioned in the news here, and some very prominent players, I think you have to be concerned about outcomes of games, and I think once you do that, the public's being cheated. I think when you go into a contest, the public should go there and feel that they're going to have a chance to see a reasonably clean contest with a chance of any kind of result. And I think people would be very concerned if you would see a trend continue the way it has continued, because you cannot, prominent people play prominent roles in the outcomes of athletic contests. And for those people to abuse themselves, abuse their bodies, then certainly they can't make that same sort of contribution.
And economic security for our district. I know that this district has a potential to challenge my background with government for our real problems I believe will help me. This system of taxes is a patchwork of nuisances and misunderstood problems facing our tax assessors. Our tax assessors can't even hardly understand this patchwork and botched up mess. How can our people themselves understand it? It is unfair. It's time to do something about this problem. I really would. I would like to get your remarks now.
Well, I think you would have much better success if
to stay and keep a strong grasp in our marketplace, not only nationally but internationally. We need a trades council.
The judge of the District Court of Montgomery County, place number 2. I firmly believe that especially concerning judges, the people must have not only the right to choose, but the opportunity to exercise that right as well. I believe that a judge must be responsive to the public. I'm not announcing now, I qualified sometime, but to end drug traffic, drunken driving, and domestic abuse. I will give fair and realistic consideration to cases and matters presented.
We present 30% of all of our income each year, annually, to the Sunshine Center.
Mr. Conley, I appreciate your offer and the offer of the Exchange Club of Montgomery for their assistance, and to let you know that with the kind assistance.
The road to the governor's office is an expensive one, and each year it costs more. The candidates have to hire a staff, rent an office, and pay advertising, travel, and other expenses. Lesser-known political hopefuls are forced to spend more money than others simply because people don't know who they are. In 1978, Fob James is believed to have spent at least $4 million in his victorious run for office. Advertising executive John Hartsfield.
People say that Fob James spent over $4 million. People are saying that Emory Fulmer may have as much as $7 million lined up. Well, 4 years ago, $4 million translates into perhaps, in 1982 money, $7 million, so that's not unthinkable.
Joe Asbell, a respected state political expert and writer, says the bulk of those millions are spent in one category.
The campaign method that is the most prevalent method of winning campaigns is 75% goes for advertising and 25% for all the other parts of it put together. A minimum of 75% for promotion and for advertising of all types.
Advertising and professional political people say it's impossible to determine a true figure on how much is spent per voter by candidates because there are so many sources of illegal and unreported contributions poured into Alabama's campaigns every 4 years. We do know that nearly 1 million Alabamians go to the polls in response to the millions spent by candidates every 4 years. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News reporting.
If a sign like this one isn't on the counter when you buy a Seiko watch, then that dealer is not authorized.
When you purchase a watch and you find that it's not an authorized Seiko watch, it may be one of the parallel or foreign model watches, then you find that Seiko may not authorize repairs on it. So if you send your watch off to repair to Seiko, wherever the regional office may be, then they may send it back to you and say, we are not authorized to repair this watch because it's been tampered with.
Ms. Martin says it's up to the consumer to ask if the store is an authorized dealer and what kind of guarantee the watch has.
Many times we've had a lot of different jewelers from around the state that have written us letters and have sent us letters from Seiko and have written the consumer back and told them just exactly why they couldn't repair the watch and that they didn't warranty it. So of course the consumer's angry, and he's angry not only at Seiko, but he's angry at the jeweler, and it's really not the jeweler's responsibility to repair the watch.
Ms. Martin says one difference between the watches is price. Most of the foreign or parallel watches are much cheaper. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Now, we're charging that Governor Fob James's memorandum of August 9th, 1979, in which he said that 70-year-olds could no longer work in state employment except if the public health of Alabama were involved, and then only with approval of the finance director, that was an exercise of legislative powers by he in the executive branch of state government.
The various hospitals listed here, and for those of you who may not know, this is St. Vincent, Brookwood, Baptist, Montclair, and this is out of the AA.
I would like to introduce to you Dr. Don Palmer.
For those of you who may not know, opened in March of 1973, so we're just short of 10 years old. I've been the chief executive.
Thank you, Ms. Marr. On behalf of the City Council of Homewood,
It encompasses the special medical, emotional, action and prevention, counseling, communications, just a few to mention.
Is that I would like to see unity within the community and to run against
the House districts as there are in the entire state of Alabama. And
Attorney Langford and I have agreed that in the future the legislative seat will be more responsive to the needs of the members that reside in the district. Also, we would work closely to coordinate the problems of that district, which is unemployment, which is crime.
How many lives, how many homes, how many children could be devastated? The drug traffic in Montgomery County is a menace to every citizen. The public interest demands that it be stopped. I can only conclude that the judge's action was a gross abuse of the high trust and responsibility of the office. The need for a change is apparent. Aware of actually what he's done, but I have some ideas about what I would do.
Why did you choose now to?
Smear and other forms of retaliation. Be that as it may, this is where I stand. If there has ever been a time and an opportunity for improvement, it's now.
Oh, we're not looking over our shoulder. You know, they're going to have to catch us. But for sure, we're not taking it for granted that they're not going to. You know, we're going to go out there and play. We play them next week. We have 8 games with them, and we just have to go out there and play the kind of sound baseball we've played so far this year.
We played well against them in the first half of the season. There's no reason why we shouldn't play well against them in the second half.
I think whether we really stay ahead of everybody, you know, and jump out to a bigger lead will be decided within the next couple of weeks.
You know, question mark's going to be our pitching, and if they can hold us there, I think we'll take it easy.
Well, I think we can. I think we have a good enough team to win it. You just can't. The only thing we're worried about is ourselves. You know, you got to go out there and make sure you go out and play hard, good, aggressive baseball. That's the only concern I have. You know, and that's all you can ask of a team.
Of Alabama, $500 million in the last couple of years. You know, and it's really an eye-opener to me to see that's how politics work. I told somebody the other day it was almost as if the truth was a thing you had to avoid out there. Sort of like the tree falling in the forest. If you weren't there, you didn't hear it fall. All I heard has been partially truthful. The rest has been just outright falsehood, in my opinion, and they know it is.
Is this what you're accusing Mr. Folsom of?
Yeah.
Last Friday, Montgomery County District Attorney Jimmy Evans held a news conference to announce the arrest of Timothy and Jane Moore of the Sellers community. They were charged with trafficking and drugs. A dispute erupted when District Court Judge Newman Sankey reduced bond for the couple from $300,000 to $10,000. The district attorney impaneled a grand jury yesterday to hear evidence in the case, and they returned 3 indictments for possession of drugs and set bond at $60,000 each, moving the case from district court to circuit court. Judge Perry Hooper conducted today's hearing at the request of defense attorneys who again asked that bond be reduced for the couple and also asked the court to suppress evidence in the case, saying officers used an improper search warrant to gain entry to the Moores' home. Defense attorneys also pointed out the bag that was identified at Friday's news conference as containing cocaine actually contained sugar and lactose. Judge Hooper agreed to reduce the bond from $60,000 to $15,000 for Jane Moore, but ordered the bond for Timothy Moore remain at $60,000. Then Judge Hooper continued the evidence suppression hearing for 2 weeks to give officers time to review their records in the case. Matt Carmack reporting from the Montgomery County Courthouse.
A bit about ourselves. Basically, we're from Dallas, and we've been involved in the real estate excitement in the air. The population.
Of that will be in renovations. We feel like that the market's here. The MHM Motor Hotel Management, our management company, is the finest in the country. We feel like they've done extensive market studies. The hotel as it exists is doing very well. And we feel like if we can capture the market totally by putting some big improvements in, that we'll do very well. Montgomery's a thriving place. The downtown area is coming back, we feel like, as is Dallas, and a lot of downtown areas are coming back. You've got a new civic center. You've got a lot of renovations going on. And we just think it's a real opportunity town.
Present to you Elias Nunley, who will be the spokesman for. We will help clear any rocks out of the road that might be there.
Approximately $2.2 million.
Well, also in a time that you don't have a lot of people investing, you have a lot of people unloading, and if you can buy something right in a time like this, then you know, if you can put it together, then you need to go ahead and buy it. There's a lot of good buys out there, and we felt like this was a very good buy.
Reverend, and I think that certainly this conference has the convention, Hilton Head Island, of course. We first of all want to begin of the chairman, and that's the Spanish in 1521. And after the Spanish, the French Huguenot Southern Governors Association itself. And they are the Southern Environmental Resources. For the matter was not brought before the 23 SGA meeting. Is the Southern States Energy Board, which of course we work very closely with. I want to Governor Brown, who will not be here till later, to handle the Southern States Energy Board portion of this meeting.
The mayor spoke first in the public hearing, saying statewide property reappraisals will mean a $2.5 million windfall in tax revenues, more than what would normally be expected in the city. And Mayor Fulmer wants to give part of the money back to the taxpayers. To do that, he wants to cut the tax rate 2.5 mils, a cut he says would send $1,300,000 back to the taxpayers. The mayor says that will leave plenty of money to run the city, plus enough to give city workers a substantial raise. The mayor says since elected officials didn't order the reappraisal, the money should go back to the taxpayers, and if they want the government to have it for specific projects, they can vote on it. After the mayor spoke, several people came forward, some for, some against the mayor's plan. Some said the taxpayers need the break. Others said the money can do more good for the taxpayers in other areas, like public schools. That was the argument of Councilman Joe Reed. Last week, he introduced a proposal to take the money the mayor would give back to the taxpayers and give it to public schools. Mr. Reed argues that the issue of what to do with the extra money is a test for the council, a test to determine just where the council stands on education. Mr. Reed says he's open to change on his proposal. He has already amended it to drop a request for part of the city's uniform beer tax. Councilman Reed made that change after Mayor Fulmer said increased property tax revenues, even with his proposed tax break, will more than make up for federal cuts to schools. Both the mayor's proposal and Councilman Reed's will not be voted on until next week. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Coach Bryant made no bones about it today. In order for Alabama to be a good football team this fall, he says it will take a tremendous group effort.
For the first time, it's more important now than ever that we get leadership from not only the staff but from in the squad. If we get all our seniors to display some leadership, and I think they're thinking in those terms, and those will have to follow, and have a lot of oneness, and go out there and play with confidence and recklessness and put on a good show. We just play like you're showing off for your grandmother or something. Well, I think we have a good team.
On team particulars, Bryant said the defense should be good, but thin up front. He says the Tide will have an adequate to good kicking game and experienced but still unproven offense. Among individuals, Bryant mentioned 3 Montgomeryans that should play prominent roles: punter Malcolm Simmons, running back Ken Simon, and nose guard Chuck McCall. And on the subject of the Southeastern Conference, he predicted it would be the top football league this fall, saying the SEC is improved and strong from top to bottom. In closing it out today, Bryant left the press with this thought.
And I hope I'm here an awfully long time, but I got to be realistic and recognize the fact that I'm in the twilight of my career, or my working days, or being on the field days or whatnot, but I'm sure to try to enjoy it. And whether I enjoy it or not is not the important. I'll enjoy it if they're the kind of people and try like I hope they will, whether we win or lose. But if they do that, we're going to win some football games.
Reporting from Tuscaloosa, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
We don't have anyone to replace him yet.
Going down, and Jimmy had been asking for those 4 people. It was those 4 people. Page 66. Myself, that's Bob. $500 million in the last couple of years. You know, there was a big flap about some. I would challenge Mr. Folsom to come down here or anywhere else unless he and I both take a polygraph test, and let's prove to drive me somewhere. That's your boss talking. So I don't, my...
Could it be that Barron was up for a game?
Dollars in 2 of the cases and $5,000 in the other cases. Very wisely, Kenneth Mendelssohn and Jim Williams of this office
More than likely. More than likely.
Every Friday after all the route and judge, and I figure I must have one today.
Few more shots. Yeah, I got one of it already. It's two of them up here. Okay. I will line it up for you.
Hey, Barney, where you gotta go? $100 stack on top and just get a shot of that. Where's our money gonna be on TV? Tonight, 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock.
All right.
I don't know, we just didn't have anything else to do.
Because
We're doing a story about how much it costs to run for government. What kind of money it costs.
6 or 7 more levels. About 6 or 7 more levels.
It's let me see, two and a half to 4 million to run. Some hundreds up there, man.
If you want us to, we can stick the hundreds on the front page.
Where'd you put the hundreds on top?
On the, just on the. Yeah. That $1,000 bill, I see. No. Unbelievable.
Throw it up. We gotta hurry because we have some banking to do. I guess we'll go over to Union Bank and do it.